welcome to another From the Forge video for the Hobbypocalypse 2022. This particular video will be building the Immolator tank for the Adepta Sororitas. I do apologise. I do apologise if my voice gives out partway through. I'm suffering a bit at the minute, but we'll soldier on and see how far we can get. So this tank is not built off the Rhino chassis or the old Rhino kit chassis. We did a video for the Rhino, I think I did a video for the Rhino, and this basically is the old Space Marines Rhino plus an upgrade sprue. The Immolator and Exorcist, however, are two completely new tanks. And as such are built quite differently to the old Rhino. So without further ado, let us crack on and start having a look at this this new kit. So we'll start with the, as ever, we'll follow the instructions through, broadly speaking, in order. If there's anything that I think looks a bit weird to do in that particular order, I'll change it up and let you know as I do it. And as ever, I'll probably be assembling this in several sub-assemblies to save me some effort when painting later. So the first part of the instructions is getting these little pieces on. They might look utterly pointless at this stage, however these are actually what hold the tracks in place when you come to attach the individual parts of the tracks for the tank. So they are quite an important piece. And definitely don't leave them off, because you'll make life a lot harder for yourself later on. So that's one, and we'll just do the other one as well. Apologies if you hear me sort of rummaging around for bits at any stage during this. As I say, I've not been well recently, and I'm a little less organised than I usually would be when doing one of these videos, mainly because I'm trying to fit it in when I'm feeling well enough to actually do it. So, I mean, the original basics of the hull, broadly speaking, the same as the Rhino, albeit with sort of sisters embellishments. Where it changes, however, is in the base plate, which has the tracks attached, which I think is a brilliant move. It's very much more helpful to have those put on at this stage rather than having to fit them all separately. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on the rear hatch. Wonderful amount of detail on there, really nice. So that is going to glue in here, and then we're going to attach the sides. Which, as you can see, there's another one of these little triangular pieces here, and a little sort of receiver point there, which helps you guide everything into place. I'm not going to say so you can't mess it up. Perhaps we'll leave it that you really shouldn't mess it up, especially if you're following the instructions. As much as I do deviate from the instructions at times, I always make sure I have looked at them first, so I do at least have an understanding of how the kit goes together before I choose whether or not to change from the order that they suggest you build the kit in, or the kits and the various kits. Don't think that simply because I don't follow the instructions all the time, I'm just sort of making it up as I go along, because I definitely wouldn't do that. That would be really silly, and not like me at all. However, in all joking aside, I have generally looked at those instructions at that point when I decide to deviate from the various methods that they suggest in the kit, and therefore there is a reason why I might do things in a different order. I do try wherever possible to explain why I might do something in a different order when I do. So apologies if there is an instance that you can think of where I've just sort of randomly gone off on one and not told you why I'm doing it. Now the downside, well I say downside of this kit is that because we've got that triangular sort of rear part, the rear hatch on the Rhino isn't articulated in the same way. Sorry, the rear hatch on the Immolator isn't articulated in the way that the one on the Rhino is, which, if I say it is a shame, but it is also completely understandable at the same time, because you don't really want to provide all of that articulation if it's not necessary. It complicates the kit, and quite frankly, if people aren't going to paint it, what's the point in putting it on there? And as far as I know, the vast majority of people don't paint them. So on to assembling the rest of the tracks. So there's 4 pieces to do now. Basically, you go sort of up and round each of these front wheels. Best to start from here, because if you start from this point, sort of the attached point, you know, you've got a fixed position, and you can just sort of slot the next track piece right up next to where it needs to go, rather than trying to sort of put it into open space and then adjust it to get the right position. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to put the glue on for all of the track pieces, because there's only 3. So it's not going to actually take us very long to put these track pieces on. And when you're doing them in this order, they always go with 3 links, then 1 link, and then 2 links is the final part. Now, they aren't quite as neat as the Rhino. As you can see, this one's being a little bit of a fiddly guy to get in. There we go. This front piece here isn't quite vertical, and so when you're putting the track links in, it's not quite as smooth as the Rhino chassis. However, as you can see, once it's in, it looks absolutely fine. So we'll go ahead and do the other 3 of those, and I will continue to babble inane nonsense at you while I'm doing it. So similarly at the back, the 3-link piece goes in first, then the single link, and then the double. Now this one is a little bit fiddlier because it needs to go under that guard there. That will fill in later when the top piece comes in. It's not much fiddlier, in all honesty, but it does go under there rather than sort of over it or around it or through it. So again, start with the 3-link piece next to the pre-molded track piece. Then plug in a second piece, just the single link, and then the third link, which is the 2-link piece. This goes in at the end. And there we go. And last one. There we go. Start with the 3-piece. And a single link. And then finally the double. Now you will notice this one is quite specific. On the instructions, obviously each part is they're all numbered anyway. However, this final track guard has some Sororitas iconography on it. That is the only one. There isn't any on the other track. Not quite sure why. I'm assuming that was a sort of something that the sculptors did for a reason. You quite often tend to find that these things are revealed months, if not years later, in interviews with the designers as to why they used to do that. You'll notice that if you've ever built a Land Raider, the track links on that have some Aquila track links, and they are specifically designed so that there is an Aquila appears 1 every 13 links. There being 12 High Lords of Terror, and the 13th link is therefore the Emperor himself. So there you go, a little bit of trivia from many moons ago when the current Land Raider model was first released. Yes, I am that old. I've been doing this that long. Right, so the next part, we have the front glacis plate. And we need to insert the heavy bolter mounts into here. As we saw with the Rhino, there's less, and actually with the rear hatch, there's less sort of customizability here. That hatch, there is no option for having that open short of cutting or drilling out the plastic behind it, so that will just be a black gap. What we've got here is 2 halves of a heavy bolter. There isn't an option to put a different weapon in the hull of these vehicles, or at least not that I'm aware of. There certainly isn't one on the kit. So I don't need to worry about sort of magnetising this for switching out at a later stage. We literally just squeeze those 2 together. And then the faffy part comes when you're trying to attach the piece that holds that heavy bolter in place. So effectively what will happen here, if you can imagine the heavy bolter sort of in place, this will just come behind it and sit like that, so that this arched piece is actually a vertical sort of bit that holds it in, and this sort of funny bit on the bottom that you thought may possibly have been a searchlight is actually just the moulded section that holds the bottom of the heavy bolter. Now, the instructions do point out at this point that you should not be gluing the heavy bolter into this part. Sorry if I can hear the cat there. It's late, she's not going out. So what I'm actually going to do is hold the heavy bolter in place from the other side, just while I pop this piece into place, and then as it clips shut, the heavy bolter should rotate. Now that might tacky up as the glue for this whole part dries. However, it should be freeable in the morning just with a bit of pressure without too many problems. We then just have this frame to go on the front here. Just to frame the sort of the heavy bolter. You will need to sort of put it on at an angle and then rotate it back. It doesn't fit over in that orientation. So yeah, you do need to angle it and then move it again. But once it's on, that is the front plate built. And that then plugs onto the front part of the Immolator here. So all we're going to do is glue these tabs. These tabs are the ones that are designed to actually hold it in place, and then just run a thin bead of glue along the bottom here where it joins the bottom part of the hole. Then push that into place. And as you can see, it's a pretty snug fit. And the basic shape is starting to take shape. So next up, let's get some headlights on. For years, I built the old style rhinos with the headlights in the wrong place. And ironically, with this kit, they've actually redesigned, as I say, redesigned the front of the rhino chassis. And the headlights on this are actually where I used to put them. My old rhinos anyway. So I'll take some sort of minor vindication in that for 15 years worth of being told I've built my rhinos wrong. I'm going to say it's 15 years. It's probably more than that. It's probably more like 20. There we go. Then we have these gratings for the sides. I'm assuming this is because Adepta Sororitas aren't as tall as Space Marines and therefore need a step to get up into the rhino, whereas the Space Marines can just step straight in. I could be wrong. Who knows? But it looks good. I will definitely not look forward to painting it though. Anyone that suggests that I will just paint that with a quick silver dry brush doesn't know me very well. I'll probably try painting some hazard stripes on it or something. Excuse me. Right. Then the top plate. Again, this is where sort of the precision of the modern kits really comes into play. Yeah, it really doesn't need any bending or persuading to fit in place. It just works. You can just see I'm just going to pop a little bit of extra glue on the back hatch here. Doesn't actually say to put any on the back hatch. It does say to put it down the sides at the back here though, which makes sense because there's not much contact point other than and that down there. So once that's all on, I'll press that into place. And what you can do if you're sort of particularly doing this properly, shall we say, in air quotation marks, would be to sort of clamp that together and leave that for 10 minutes or so, just while that glue sets. I think what I'm then going to do now is to deviate, and the reason for that is because the instructions would have you put another piece on the top of the immolator here. And this one is probably not so significant in terms of a deviation, but basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the engine, the exhaust stacks on. Mainly because I think I can do that. That's sort of the side part of the kit then done. There's a piece to come on the back here, and then the turret we'll do separately as a sub-assembly anyway. However, we have 4 exhaust stacks. These are essentially identical to all intents and purposes, so don't worry if you get these mixed up. The flames that come out of them, however, are not. These flames are all slightly angled, obviously in the direction or away from the direction of travel of the tank. So when you come to put these on the vehicle, make sure you put them facing the right way. Otherwise, it will look like your Adepta Sororitas Immolator is very bravely reversing out of the direction of the enemies, which is not very zealous. And they are known to be particularly zealous. I think the idea that sort of the Sororitas would run away from the enemy is quite anathema to them, shall we say. So yeah, as you can see, those 2 flame sort of pieces are broadly heading in opposite directions, so they will be on opposite sides of the tank when we're done. Just checking to make sure I'm putting the 2 together that are facing the same way. And obviously if you're doing this and following the instructions, then you will get it right because all of these parts are numbered. Excuse me. Right. Now, we then come to a part that I find particularly weird about this kit. And you can see we've got an indentation down the side of the tank here, which you would think is where the exhaust nestles in. But no, what actually happens is that pentagon plugs in at the bottom, and then the rest of it actually just stands proud. Now you can see the indentation behind if you look really carefully with the light in the right direction. I genuinely don't know why they've done it that way. The other thing to make sure is when you put this on, there is actually a little bit of play, even though that sort of attachment part at the bottom is a very specific shape. So when you put these exhaust stacks on, do check it and make sure it's lined, you're happy sort of that it's vertical. Because the last thing that you want is for you to have built this kit and then for the stack on the side to be at an angle, because you'll see it every time you pick it up. And if you're anything like me, which presumably you are because you're watching these videos, that will irritate the hell out of you. Does that look straight to you? Yeah, yeah, cool, thank you. Let's do these other two. There we go. All flames blowing in the right direction. So now we'll get to this piece that comes on the back here. In fairness, there is no reason why you shouldn't do this in the order that the instructions tell you to. But I've actually already prepped the Exorcist chassis, which hasn't got this on, which is why I did the exhaust stacks first on that one. And therefore why I did the exhaust stacks first on this one as well, just to sort of keep myself consistent. So this is the shrine that sits at the back of the Immolator gun housing. Made out of wood, of course, because what else would you make sort of something out of when you've got massive flaming smokestacks that sort of belching out of the engine, and ultimately what's normally going to be a pair of heavy flamethrowers attached to the turret. I think I'm probably actually going to build mine as the multi-melter variant, because the particular list that I'm looking at is otherwise a little bit short on anti-tank, mainly because I'm not intending on buying any Retributor squads just yet, and therefore I'm going to be short on multi-melters in the rest of the army. So I think it makes more sense in my case to have those extra anti-tank options on here. I mean, that's not going to say that, that's not going to mean, of course, that if it's possible to have those turret options sort of either magnetised or sort of retained in such a way that they can be swapped out, that I won't do that. I certainly will if it's reasonable. But again, when it comes to building a kit, it's usually sensible to have some idea of which variant you want to build before you assemble it. So that if it does come to the stage where you look at the kit and think, I can't magnetise that, or I can't sort of keep those weapon options as options, you know which set you're going to put up. I should say, of course, that by keeping it flexible, you are keeping yourself, or protecting yourself from any sort of future FAQs that might sort of drop if one particular variant of a kit stands out as being more competitive than others. You know, there are players out there, plenty of them, who will sort of buy and build 3 of the same variants, and inevitably what then happens is the FAQ comes out. That variant is either nerfed in effectiveness or increased in points cost, making it less desirable, and then all of a sudden you want to build the other variant. So if you can keep things flexible, then I strongly recommend that you do. So the instructions would then have us going on to the turret section for assembly. I'm not quite sure why at that stage, and so I'm going to keep building the rest of the chassis. Now, when you look at these doors, you can see again we've got little sticky out sort of pegs, for want of a better word, and a matching pattern in the door area of the tank. So what we'll do, we'll just blob a load of glue on there, because this is actually all going to be covered up in there, like that. And we'll do the same on the other side. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why the instructions sort of then would suggest you deviate and start building the turret part of the vehicle when you haven't finished assembling the bottom part. I mean, what they do seem to suggest in the instructions is that you do keep the turret separate as a sub-assembly, so that you don't actually have to glue it in. And as you can see from that sort of little demonstration, again, the precision engineering of the kit is such that you don't have to, you certainly don't have to glue it in for it to stay where it's supposed to be. So I mean, basically I'm just going to keep building the main hull until that's done, and then I'll do the turret separately at the end. So this is the section that holds the spiked ram at the front of the kit, and that's basically what's going to go on the front. The Exorcist one is different. Looks more like a busted grill of some kind. And if you're feeling particularly keen, then you could probably model some kind of impaled heretic on that, which would look quite cool. But I don't have the models or the sculpting skill, quite honestly, to do that. These are frustratingly fiddly parts, however, to get in place. And if I recall, actually, even just to get trimmed down, these 2 bits were a complete faff. They're so small, I could barely hold them once I clipped them off the frame to actually get the extraneous bits of plastic off them. Drop that in. Good, I did get them the right way around. It is important to follow the instructions when you're doing that, because they are 2 separate, the 2 pieces are different. And so if you get them in the wrong way around, they won't fit, or at least they won't fit very well. Now, when you look at the front, you can just see 2 recessed sections here. That's where this is going. holds in place because that part there just sort of turns the angle and sits in place on the front of the tank like that. Then what do we have? Oh, we've got a cherub. I do love a cherub. Wings and chain. So, this one's a skull face cherub. Even cooler. And he has some glue on the back here. Attaches to his body. Something like that. Come on, there we go. Then we have some wings to go in. Just like that. This, believe it or not, is supposed to clip in here. So I will come back to that because what I want is for the glue on that to set first. Then I'll come back and put the baby cherub dude on afterwards. So next we have the Hunter Killer Missile. It will always miss. However, this one is very pretty and so is always worth putting on. In my experience, it doesn't matter. If you tell your opponent you haven't paid the points for it and you're not going to use it, they won't care that it's on there. And put the actual tip of the missile in to prove that it actually is on there. And then I'll just drop a little line of glue down there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I keep it far enough away from the sort of the rear part of the hull here that I can get in and paint that. And I'm also going to make sure that it's lined up straight. You know me by now. There we go. Then we have some Adepta Sororitas smoke launchers. These are delightful things. They're going to be real fun to paint when we get round to those. However, they do glue together quite easily. And then just with a dot of glue on each of the undersides there, they can sit quite nicely just at the front. Like that. Just going to put that in place to make sure it doesn't foul it if I do decide to turn it round. That is where the instructions actually recommend that you put the smoke launchers, by the way. The kit has a couple of extra parts in it for the Exorcist. which I'm assuming is something to do with the top panel, because it lifts where the smoke launchers actually go. And they're included on the basic sort of chassis kit for this model as well. Have to excuse me a moment, I have another cough coming. Hopefully you're appreciating the efforts that I'm going to do these videos for you all. And if that is the case, then please don't forget the affiliate link that's posted in the video description for Element Games. Anything you buy from there using that affiliate link, I get a 5% kickback, which helps me to then buy more kits and do more videos for you in the future. So hopefully it's a nice arrangement all round. Element Games seem to like it, I certainly like it. And given their customer service, I can't see why anyone else wouldn't. Yeah, here we go. Here's an interesting part of the instructions, which appear to be wrong. Unless I'm using the wrong part, which is entirely possible. No, I'm using the right parts. The instructions are drawn wrong. Not significantly so, it's just in terms of how the how this glues on. It's shown as a single central point of attachment rather than two spot points. Nothing for you to worry about. So this, I'm assuming, is the targeting system that we're doing here. And I'm going to assemble it in this order to make sure that I'm putting it in the right way around. That can only go in one way, and then that part sticks into that. And again, it does actually look as though that only goes in one way around, which is good. Well, then do that down there. That's going to be fun getting a brush into, but never mind. Okay. Just checking that to make sure that that's not going to interfere with any painting later on. I don't think it is. So I'll squeeze that one in there. And here's where I wish I had left some parts on the sprue, because here's where we have two little levers to come in, and I'm not sure which one's which. I say that the instructions do sort of seem to suggest that I can work it out. It looks as though the long straight one goes on the right and the shorter angled one goes on the left. Like that. We have front and rear parts of the gunner. that. Oops. Need the arms in place. Yeah, don't do that just yet. Put the arms in first. And I am just for now going to drop her on top there, like that. So, oh look, those levers match up, isn't that nice? Wasn't that clever? Aren't I good? And then the important part, let's put some instructions up here, shall we? So this is where we have to decide which guns to use. Well, let's give the gunner a helmet first, shall we? Not quite sure why she appears to have an inflated head. Looks like something out of a theme hospital. However, she does. We then have two more levers to put in place on the outer section. Thankfully these ones you can put where you want because they don't have to attach to hands. Again, these are quite small, quite fiddly parts, especially if you're trying to clean sort of flash lines off them. However, because they're so small and fiddly, they probably won't notice if you haven't sort of cleaned them down completely. So, what we then have is the rear casings for 4 guns. And if you've done what I have and clipped everything off the frame, look for the 2 lights there at the top. That's how you match them up. So, dead easy to magnetise. Drill your hole for your magnet in there once it's glued together. And then once the weapon's done, drill a corresponding hole in the weapon for a magnet. So what I will do is I'm going to glue this together first. I haven't actually got any magnets to the right size at the moment, so it may be that pressure fit will do enough for now, and I'll add the magnets later. When I've got round to buying some. So there we go, those are 2 gun assemblies. Then we have the housing for those assemblies. There we go, and that just plugs in there like that to allow for movement of the gun itself. Now actually there's no glue anywhere near that moving part. It's still quite firm and resistant to movement. So those guns aren't just going to sag. When you put this in place, you're not going to worry about If you don't glue it, it'll look sort of weird and the guns will just droop. Those will hold quite nicely in place. So let's do the other one. This upright, by the way, goes on the outside of the tank. So we've got those in place. I'll just drizzle some glue on the base. And then plug those in place on the top there. And do the same for this one. It's starting to get a bit tight in there for painting, but thankfully there's not really anything else to add to that. What we have got is the actual guns themselves. And of course it's inevitable that as we get towards the end of the video, that's when I dropped a piece on the floor. Rather than at the start when I could potentially have stopped it and started again. I do tend to do most of these videos in one take, so unless something drastic happens, mainly because I'm lazy and I don't like snipping footage together. So I'm just going to put these multi-melters together for now. The heavy bolters or the immolation flamers work in exactly the same way. They just sort of push together. I'm just going to make sure I'm wiping any excess glue off the back there, because I'm going to put it in place in the actual gun, and so I don't want it sticking. Because then I wouldn't be able to swap it out. And yeah, just in case you were wondering, there is plenty of friction there to hold that in place. You do not need magnets. Quite honestly, a magnet in there would just be a waste of money. I mean, yeah, the whole thing hangs off that gun fitting without any problem at all. So the only other piece to come on here is actually the glass shield. Also, the next piece, should I say? It's not the only other piece. There is also some little uprights at the front here, but I'm not going to glue those in because those seemingly are part of some buttresses that hold that panel up, and so I don't want to stick those in and then find that I can't put that panel in place. So there you have it. The only thing left to do is to stick the cherub, attach him to his chain so that he doesn't fly off and stick his trumpet where it's not supposed to go. I'll just hold him for a minute, just while the glue grips. And in the meantime, I can pop the gun assembly on top there. And there we go. One fully assembled Immolator, or nearly fully assembled. Obviously I've not got the gun shield in place, but that needs to be put in after it's painted, because it's in a transparent plastic. Beautifully gothic, and all done in under an hour. There we go. Till next time, look after yourselves, better than I'm looking after myself apparently. Hope you're all well, and we'll see you in the next video.